Good morning. This is Adam, back with another installment of the Shade Tree Mechanic. I had been wanting to get back to doing some videos. It's been quite some time. I think it's been a little bit over a month now. And wanted to get back into telling you guys some tips, tricks, and some general things that I've found when I've been working on pieces of equipment. However, being a shade tree mechanic, a lot of times we are at the mercy and conditions that the weather decides to present to us, and unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, we have been in a rather wet pattern here in Texas. So when things like that happen and you don't have much for workspace or covered area or anything like that to work with, you really have a limitation on what you can and can't do when you're working on these pieces of equipment. But that being said, today is a nice enough day. I mean, yeah, it's a little on the breezy side, so I will give this one little tip and trick. If you are a shade tree mechanic and you have no covered or enclosed workspace to work with to do your projects, especially when you're talking about yard equipment, I would say that if you have a plan to do anything with a fuel system, to avoid that if you're in a very dusty area that's prone to blowing dust around, especially when it's windy. Avoid that if you're any more than like 15 miles an hour expected wind. And the reason why is because getting any kind of debris or dust in your fuel system, whether you're working on a gas tank flush or you're trying to pull a carburetor and clean it, that's not necessarily going to be a very good thing for you to do on a day like that, because anything that's in that system is going to cause you problems later on. That being said, if it's something simple like a carburetor change, where you don't have a very open area on the motor that's exposed to the elements, you can do a carburetor change if that's all you're planning on doing. But if you're working on a carburetor, taking it apart, trying to clean it up and everything, or the fuel lines or anything like that, a windy day is not the best to do that. I did want to show you guys an acquisition of mine. I picked this up last week. I paid $350 for it. I'm going to turn this around here and show you guys what I've got to work with. This is my new project. It is a John Deere LA125. It has a Briggs & Stratton 21 horsepower overhead valve engine on it. The hours on this thing, this mower is about 4 years old, as you can see as I zoom in here. If I can get a clear picture, maybe not. About 516 hours. Not in bad shape. But I will tell you, I went to check on this mower thanks to a tip from my wife saying that this was available at a local yard sale that was going on. And I went to check it out at her behest and decided to go ahead and pick it up. I got over there and I started it and I drove it around the yard and everything, and it ran just fine. I wanted to see how it handled, if there was any kind of rattling noise in the engine, or if there was any kind of issues with the PTO. And this mower has been very well kept, being that it's a John Deere. Usually most of the complaints with John Deere have to do with the hood. This hood that they make with the John Deeres, unfortunately, is made out of a substandard plastic, and most of the complaints is that they get sun-baked rather quickly, and they crack, and then they become absolutely useless. And so people generally will get rid of them. You might have some industrious persons get after it and do a fiberglass repair or Bondo or something like that. And I've actually seen some people take metal strapping and bolt the pieces back together to create a shroud for their engine. I will say that if you've got your mower parked in a covered location that is well protected from the elements, having the hood on, I mean, yeah, it does provide protection. It does prevent a lot of intake of dust and debris into your air filtration system, and therefore also your carburetor and fuel system. But generally speaking, unless you have a really patchy lawn where the lawn is not that great, you've got more dirt than grass, you can actually get away with mowing your lawn without having the hood on, and it's not going to hurt your motor at all. But that is the primary complaint with these John Deeres, and it doesn't seem to matter which model of John Deere that you get unless it comes with a metal hood, which very few of those newer mowers are actually coming out with them. It's not until you get into the larger size tractors that they actually start to have these metal hoods that you don't really have to worry too much about them deteriorating on you with. That being said, I don't know what the paint job is like on those. You may end up having issues with fading, wearing paint, maybe some rust spots, stuff like that. But that's normal wear and tear, and every single piece of equipment is different, so those are going to wear at different rates based on the quality that the company sees fit to put in their machines. That being said, I went ahead and checked this all out and everything, and when I got done, I was satisfied enough to go ahead and pick this mower up. I do believe it's a good buy. My intent with this is to fix and flip it. For anyone who is looking to do fix and flip, you do have to weigh your market. And what I mean by that is simply this. Do your research, find out what these things are going for on average based on the condition that they are in your area. That will determine what your most that you can put out on one of these is going to be. Now, like I said, I spent $350 on this one, and in the condition that it's in, it sounds great. It runs great. There's no problems that I can see. The one thing that I did have was when I went to start the thing back up to go put it on my trailer. At the time I went to check it out, I didn't have my truck and trailer with me, but I ended up going back to the house because it wasn't that far to go, and got my trailer hooked up, got back on the mower, and I tried to fire it up so that I could drive it onto my trailer and everything, and it would not start. The one thing that I can say that they neglected on this mower is the battery terminals. They did not clean the battery terminals. I got this thing back home, and I kind of expected, most of your mower batteries, they will last a year most of the time at best. Now, the reason for that is simple. If you're going to go and get a battery that's cheap, it will last as long as the company has designed it to last. Most of your Walmart style batteries, like this one is, it's an Everstart, and it's upside down here, but you can see what it says. It says Everstart, and I don't know if you can read that date, but it says 4 of 23, which means April of 23 is when this battery was sold to this customer. And it's a year old, but you don't expect that kind of limited lifespan when you go and get a car battery. On these tractors, the amperage is so high on these things. It's not like your amperage on your car batteries. The amperage is so high on these things that they really do take a beating. They go through a lot of wear and tear, and there is a lot that's going on there with the battery. So I mean, yeah, the systems are very similar to your vehicle, but I don't remember what the cranking amps on my car is, but I don't really think that you're getting to get that kind of cranking amps needed for your average vehicle, especially with their fuse systems and stuff like that. You know, these things have a starter solenoid, they have a fuse. A lot of times they will actually have more than one fuse. It really just depends on the model. Once you get into the bigger machines, the fuses go up. This one is not really a big machine. It's a 42-inch cut, 21 horse engine. You know, it's your basic, so it's got a single fuse, and it's cranking amps on this thing. If I'm not mistaken, I read yesterday it said 225 or something like that on this battery for cold start cranking amps. But the problem was they didn't check the terminals. They didn't maintain the terminals. It wasn't getting a good connection. I got the thing home. I anticipated with the age of the battery that I'd probably have to change it. I actually lucked out because the battery that I had figured to change it to wasn't compatible with this model. So that's another thing that's kind of important here. Make sure when you go to get a new battery, you either A, take the battery that came out of the machine that worked in the machine with you. It's wise to do that anyway because you can get a cord charge. Now, I know it's not worth that much, but every little penny counts. They'll probably only give you about $10 off of your purchase price is what the average is going to be. But the thing is, make sure everything is the same. So the battery that I was going to replace this one with, you can see here, this is the front of the battery, and the front is notated by the top. So the sticker here is at the top of the battery, therefore this is the front of the battery, and the sticker is facing that way, so you have to be facing this way in order to read this sticker. Oh, 230 cold cranking amps is what it says, so it's pretty close. So anyway, the battery that I had and thought might work actually had the posts on the other side. In some mowers this is not a big deal, but in this one, these wires right here, the wire for the positive and the wire for the negative here, they don't have any slack in them. And that means there's no room to go to the back of the equipment to stick that in. So the battery that I had posts on the back side here. This one has them on the front, and therefore that battery would not work. And sometimes simple things like that, you know, are a hard lesson. Thankfully, I actually had that battery on hand, so I didn't make a trip into town in order to get the battery. And having made that mistake, doing it that way, which would have cost me a lot more time and a lot more miles to go. I don't live real close to much of anywhere. It's about 15 to 20 miles to go into town to get a proper battery for one of these things for me, which means a 30-mile round trip. So, you know, it's not the most efficient use of my time. So, like I said, save yourselves a little bit of a hassle and a little bit mistake, and make sure that if you are having to change a battery, that you do in fact take it with you or take a picture so that you have a comparison of what to look for. And it's not real hard. If you take a picture, most of your people who are helping you out at like the auto parts store that carries the lawn tractor batteries, or your Tractor Supplies or Home Depot or whatever, if you have any questions, most of the people who are working in those departments are pretty knowledgeable and willing to help you out really quickly and easily and everything. That is, if you can get a hold of an associate for that purpose. We all know how much of a challenge that can be, but that's a different rant. So I'm going to stay away from that subject for now. But anyways, when I pulled off these terminals and I saw how corroded they were, I decided to go ahead and check the battery to see how viable the battery still was. I checked both the amperage as well as the voltage on this thing, and it showed up perfectly. Now, in a battery situation, in order to make sure that the battery is correct, the proper way to do that is to get an actual battery tester. Now, some of your battery chargers will actually have a built-in tester. Those are most of the time okay, but in order to check this properly, you need a battery tester and or a multimeter to do this, and you have to know how to do it. And it's not hard. In another video, I'll probably show how that goes, but I didn't have this inkling to do this yesterday, so I've already done what I'm going to do with this battery. But those terminals were so corroded and everything, I took a wire wheel on my drill and I cleaned them off real good and everything, and I got those contacts nice and clean. And I did the same thing on the battery cables as well. So I took the battery cables, and the battery cables were actually worse than the terminals on the battery were. So I took those cables and I wire wheeled the heck out of those, and I got, shiny metal back, which is what you want for a good connection. And then I went ahead and replaced the mounting bolts and nuts, because those, if they are corroded, can also cause a contact issue and cause you a problem with starting. So I went ahead and did that, and wouldn't you know, I stuck the battery back in and the thing fired right up like it had no problems whatsoever and started purring like a kitten. So save yourself some time, save yourself some hassle, save yourself some money by all means, and definitely make sure that you're checking those battery terminals. A lot of times when you've got an electrical issue and the motor won't start, it could be just as simple as that, and that will save you guys time. And above all, it'll save you guys some money, and even if you're just flipping these things, I mean, yeah, it's quick and easy sometimes to just go to the end of the store and buy a battery, but if you don't need to, if the thing is only a year old, double check it, because it may just be that. So that's what I wanted to give you guys a tip on today. There is another thing that I got to check out with this mower, and if I find that that's the problem, I'm going to get back on here and do a video on that and that procedure, and see about talking about that for a minute. I do have to go back over this mower and check it out, but for you guys who are wanting to turn this into a side hustle and profit and everything, there's some things on these riders you have to check. They're a little bit more extensive than your mowers, and I will present that on another video, because it really is important to look these things over thoroughly when you're making a decision as to whether or not to buy these things. So that being said, this is Adam, the Shade Tree Mechanic, Texas edition. And if you found any of this information useful, or anything that was said that you didn't know before, or anything in regards to the subject that I may not have covered, please feel free to message me, comment, say something about this video. If you like this video, please hit the like button. By all means, please share it if you found it useful. I'm trying to help the average person out who's wanting to get into this and doesn't necessarily know how. Like I said, in previous videos, I've been doing this for about 5 years, and I mean, I picked up a lot of information in that 5 years, and a lot of it is just looking at videos and figuring out stuff that you don't necessarily know or you're not sure of. So that being said, my goal is to help you out. If this helped you out, please help me out with that. Thank you. Have a good day.